My stepsister stole my fiancé and sent me postcards to brag about it. Now they're out of money and asking me for a job at the family business she was supposed to get. I, 28F, was engaged to my college boyfriend about 4 years ago. We had been together throughout college and got engaged when we were 23. A week before our wedding, he ran off with my stepsister. My ex-fiancé, Greg, 28M, and my stepsister, Melissa, 28F, eloped, leaving me only a letter. In the letter, Greg explained he had started an affair with Melissa a few months after our engagement. He realized he couldn't marry me because it wouldn't be fair to any of us. He said he and Melissa were truly in love and believed that the universe had used me to bring him to her. So they ran away, and I didn't see them again until recently. Greg's parents paid for the entire wedding, so I didn't have to spend any money because they were so ashamed of their son's actions. That was basically the last time I had any contact with them because there wasn't much else to say. But my family was furious. My parents were really angry, especially my stepdad. He even thought about hiring a private investigator to find Greg and Melissa and bring them back for an explanation. By the way, my stepdad is actually my dad, even though we're not related by blood. He's been my dad since I was little, and that's how I've always seen him. I've never known my biological dad. He left us shortly after I was born, and my mom never saw him again because he gave up his rights to me, and they were never married. My mom married my dad when I was 8. Melissa and I went to the same school, and that's how our parents met. For some reason, Melissa didn't like me and treated me badly for years. She was a real bully, not just at school, but at home too. She and her friends would tease and bother me all the time. I told my parents, but even when they scolded her, she didn't stop. She wasn't even scared of our parents, so she kept on bullying me. School was awful because of her and her friends. Just like my dad wasn't in the picture, Melissa's mom wasn't around either. Her mom had passed away when she was young, during a seizure. Whenever my mom tried to discipline her, Melissa would say she had no right because she wasn't her real mom. My dad tried to make her stop, but nothing worked. They tried talking to her nicely and scolding her, but she just kept on bullying me. Sometimes they would threaten to send her away, but she would challenge them because she knew they weren't serious. That was how she acted in middle school. But things got worse as time went on. By high school, she had picked up a lot of bad habits and was basically a troublemaker. She started smoking and sometimes snuck out to drink with her friends, who were just as wild as she was. It wasn't until she got caught breaking into a house with her friends while drunk that our parents decided to send her away for help. After a lot of arguing and pleading, our parents finally convinced her to go to a rehab center for troubled teens. She wasn't happy about it, but my dad insisted. He said if she wanted to stay with us and be part of the family, she had to change her ways. He couldn't let her keep causing trouble and hurting others because she was turning into a danger to society. She left during our sophomore year and didn't return until after we graduated high school. She went to a school near the rehab center and stayed with her aunt. I didn't see her during those years because I wasn't interested in how my biggest bully was doing. My parents visited her every weekend and asked if I wanted to go, but I always said no. After she left, her friends stopped bothering me, which made high school much better for me. Melissa kept studying while she was in rehab, and when she came back, she apologized to me for everything she did. She seemed calmer, and I thought she had changed. We were going to college soon anyway, so I forgave her. Once we started college, I moved out, and so did she. We only came back for holidays, and she was much nicer to me. By nicer, I mean she just ignored me instead of bullying me like she used to. Honestly, I was glad for the change because being ignored was better than being bullied. Our parents noticed, but they didn't push us to act like sisters, considering our rocky past. Then I started dating Greg. After a year, I brought him home for Thanksgiving to meet my parents. We all got along well, and even Melissa seemed interested in the conversation, which was rare since she came back from rehab. She and Greg got along, and she started showing more interest in being friends with me after I started dating him. I was puzzled by this sudden change and wondered if she liked Greg. One day I asked her if she was trying to be friends with me because of Greg, but she laughed and said no. Greg had mentioned how close he was with his siblings during our first dinner together, talking about his family. That made Melissa rethink how she'd been treating me since coming back from rehab. She wanted to make things right and improve our relationship, not because of Greg, but he did make her realize she needed to change. She confessed she blamed me for her being sent away for a long time, but she eventually accepted it wasn't my fault. She admitted her bad behavior led to her problems, so she needed to stop blaming me and work on our relationship if she wanted to truly be part of the family. Her sincere apology touched me, so I forgave her and decided to be friends. It hurt the most because she betrayed our friendship. For a long time, Melissa and I were getting along well, and she helped a lot with wedding planning. We weren't best friends, but things were much better than before. As we worked on our relationship, we met up once or twice a month and talked. By the time I got engaged, things were going well between Melissa and me. I had introduced her to Greg, and they seemed fine together at family gatherings. I never suspected anything because they acted normal. Even after we got engaged, they kept up the act, and I never suspected Greg had feelings for Melissa. It didn't cross my mind because Greg acted like he loved me, even though he was cheating with Melissa. She also pretended to be my friend very convincingly. I only found out the truth when it was too late, and they had already left. My parents wanted to find them and bring them back, but I told them to forget it. I just wanted to move on and forget everything. It was already terrible enough that they embarrassed me by running away right before my wedding. I didn't want any more drama because I was feeling really down and just couldn't handle it. For the next few weeks, I just worked and slept to avoid facing my feelings. My heart was broken and I felt numb, but things were about to get worse. A few weeks after what was supposed to be my wedding day, I got a postcard from Melissa. She was in California, and she even included pictures of her and Greg looking happy together. It was obvious she was trying to upset me because she mentioned being sorry about what happened before my wedding, but she wasn't really sorry. It was just to make me mad. That's when I realized Melissa never really forgave me for what happened in the past. She blamed me for her being sent away and used our friendship to get close to Greg. I trusted her, but she just used me to get what she wanted. It was a really sneaky plan, I have to admit. After she sent me that postcard, I couldn't sleep for days. It was incredibly upsetting and traumatic. I had to go to therapy for months to work through the damage and deal with my trust issues. And it didn't stop with just one postcard. Melissa kept sending them for months, showing her and Greg together. It only stopped after about a year when I didn't respond and refused to get involved in the drama. Our parents were really upset about it and cut ties with her. It was a big loss for Melissa because she was supposed to inherit her dad's business. She wanted to study business because she hoped to work with her dad someday. But after what she did, our dad cut ties with her. He offered me the chance to work with him instead, feeling like he needed to make it up to me. I didn't study business. I studied history, which is very different. But my dad said he'd teach me everything so I could take over the business instead of Melissa. I agreed and started learning from him. I worked really hard for a couple of years, and last year I got promoted and my dad retired. It felt amazing because I had to start from the beginning and learn everything. But now things are going smoothly and I've been running the business for some time. Thanks to me, my parents can spend more time together without worrying about the business because I'm taking care of it. It's been like this for a while, and once I started working for my father, I stopped thinking about Greg. Working in therapy helped me move on, and now I hardly think about them or what they did. I never expected them to reach out to me again, let alone ask for my help. It takes a lot of nerve and a serious lack of common sense to ask for help after what they did to me. But I guess Melissa and Greg really lack common sense, because that's what they did. A few days ago, I was home on the weekend when someone started ringing my doorbell like crazy around lunchtime. I figured it was the pizza delivery guy, so I didn't think much of it. But when I opened the door, I got the shock of my life. Instead of the delivery guy, there stood Melissa, looking really worried. I was speechless, so I just waited for her to speak. Seeing her, I realized she was in bad shape and must be here to ask for help. Her appearance gave it away. Melissa always dressed nicely as a kid, but now she was wearing old, faded clothes that looked like they hadn't been updated in a while. Her jeans were too short, and she looked like she hadn't been eating well. I had already decided that whatever Melissa was going to ask, my answer would be no. As she explained that Greg had lost his job and turned to drinking instead of finding a new one, I stayed silent. Melissa said she had stopped working to support Greg when they moved away, leaving a gap in her resume that made it hard to find a job now. She'd heard our father had retired and passed the business to me, so she came to ask if I'd hire Greg. She apologized for her past actions and hoped I'd help her out. She hadn't talked to our parents yet and came straight to me, thinking I might be understanding and feeling really guilty for betraying me. Her audacity was so outrageous that I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. I told her to look for help elsewhere because I don't hire people who cheat. Then I closed the door on her and went back to the living room, ready to call the cops if she didn't leave soon. Luckily, she did leave that day, but she hasn't stopped bothering me since. After she left, the first thing I did was call our parents and tell them what happened. They had heard from some neighbors that Melissa was back in town without Greg, but hadn't reached out to her. Our town is small, so news spreads fast. We found out that Melissa had been staying with one of her old friends from high school for about a week before visiting me. It's likely Melissa's friend told her where I lived and about me taking over the business. A few days after visiting me, Melissa went to our parents to complain about how I was being mean. She thought they'd take her side, believing she was suffering more, but she was wrong. My dad said the business was mine to run, and he wouldn't interfere. My mom reminded her that after running away with my fiancé and pretending to be my friend, she lost the right to ask for help from any of us, especially me. Melissa tried to defend herself, saying she had changed, but my parents told her to leave because they didn't want anything to do with her anymore. She got upset, saying they always favored me and treated me better. She claimed our dad treated me like his favorite and didn't treat her well, even though they were related. My dad reminded her that he had been more forgiving of her behavior than most parents would be. She argued it didn't matter and said she deserved the business and everything I had. Melissa claimed it wasn't her fault Greg chose her over me and that the postcards were meant to apologize, not to upset me. What she said has been on my mind. It's true she was supposed to inherit the business, but she lost it because of her actions. I didn't have a say in my dad's decision to give me the business. It feels unfair for her to blame me. The idea of me being the favorite isn't true, but I get why she feels that way. She was sent away because of her bullying, and it was a big deal for our parents. If my dad hadn't taken action, Melissa might have ended up worse off. I don't believe her postcards were genuine apologies. They seemed meant to torment me. I feel bad for her because Greg turned out to be useless, and now she has to bail him out. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her to ask me for help. I kind of regret treating her harshly because I have everything now, and she has nothing. I feel sorry for her, but I don't want to help her in any way. The most I can offer is my sympathy. I don't want to hire them or give them money. It's enough that I feel bad for her after everything she put me through. Most people wouldn't. The only reason I feel bad is because the business was supposed to be hers, and now I'm in a position of power. Am I the asshole for refusing to hire my ex-fiancé, who eloped with my stepsister now that they're struggling with money and need help? I'm finally getting back at her. I just feel like it's not right. It might be because of what she said about me being the golden child, or maybe just plain old imposter syndrome, but I feel weird about this. So aita for refusing to hire my ex-fiancé who eloped with my stepsister now that they're struggling with money and need help. Update 1. I didn't know what to do, and the comments here just confused me even more. Some of you said I was doing the right thing by turning them away, while others said I had always been the golden child, and that's why Melissa started to act out. This wasn't as helpful as I had hoped. I decided to talk to my parents because every time I have faced problems, I've always approached them for advice. They told me I had no reason to feel sorry for Melissa because everyone had gone above and beyond to try and make her a better person. If she wasn't willing to change, there wasn't much we could do for her. My father said he had every intention of letting her take over the business if she had behaved herself and been a good daughter. But she failed at everything and made a mockery of our family. After that, she would be foolish to expect him to let her take over or even be part of the family anymore. Talking to my parents always helps, and this made me feel considerably better, so I'll try not to feel guilty about things I don't do anymore. Update 2. It's been about a week since Melissa showed up at my door. After her visit to my parents, we hadn't heard from her. I almost thought she had gone back to California to be with Greg, until today when she showed up at my workplace to make a scene. It was horrible because she knew the place well from childhood and got in without alerting security. She stood in front of my office and started shouting that I had stolen the business from her by pretending to be a good daughter and always trying to please our parents. She accused me of falsely blaming her for bullying me throughout our childhood and convincing our father to send her to rehab to cement my position as the favored child. She claimed the business was supposed to be hers, but I was refusing to let her be part of it because I was jealous that Greg had chosen her over me. She said that unlike our parents, who always favored me, I couldn't handle being overlooked, so I turned them against her. Her outburst was shocking and embarrassing, but it reinforced my decision to keep her out of my life and the business. When I heard the yelling, I decided to check it out after calling security. I tried to tell her to shut up, but she kept going for a few minutes until she was finally thrown out of the building. I called my dad before calling the cops to get his opinion, and he was furious. He told me to go ahead and call the police. Thankfully, when the cops showed up, she was still lurking nearby, probably waiting for me to leave the building so she could yell at me or maybe do something worse like physically attack me. The cops took her away and charged her with trespassing and disturbing the peace. These are minor charges and she'll probably get off with either a fine or community service, but it's certainly going on record. I told my dad she had been charged and arrested, expecting him to be a little upset, but he only seemed exasperated and said he was tired of dealing with her insanity. I feel bad for him because it can't be easy having a daughter like Melissa and being blamed for everything that goes wrong in her life, even though it's mostly her own fault. Honestly, we have all been very patient. Update 3. It looks like Melissa has gone back to California. It's been a couple of days and we haven't heard from her, which is odd because we expected her to lash out after her arrest. My dad asked around and found out that a few people saw her heading towards the airport the other day, so I assume she has left. It's a huge relief that she's gone because I was genuinely afraid she would try something drastic to get our attention next, and that's always bad news. I don't know what she's going to do about the situation with Greg now because it seems unlikely she'll get help from anyone else after this. I just hope she finds something to do and gets out of this mess. And no, I'm not being kind or compassionate right now. I have very selfish reasons for saying this because I know if she doesn't find a way out, she'll just come back here with Greg and bother us more. I don't want that. So I genuinely hope and pray that either she or Greg finds a job and they can support themselves. Either way, I don't have to hear from her for a couple of weeks at least, and I believe this nightmare is over now.